Hey, beautiful people, it is another episode of Medshield Movement Connect show with me, Dr. Fez. Now, we're going to be speaking with somebody who's a cancer survivor, but also a CEO and honestly just a wealth of knowledge, Bradley Woodhouse. Get ready to know what you don't know about being body brilliant. This is the Medshield Movement Connect show, where we connect the dots between fitness, health, wellness, nutrition, and of course you. Hosted by me, Dr. Fez Mkhize, and a special guest that we have every month, sharing knowledge, insights, and groundbreaking tips on how to get fitter, be stronger, and live healthier. Turn up the volume and listen close. Today you amplify. It's the Medshield Movement Connect show. Let's go. Kylie, thank you so much for sitting down.
Hey, Fizz.
Yeah, you have an interesting story, right? You're not just somebody who loves wellness for the sake of loving wellness. I know that you've had the battle that you had with cancer, and that helped you reframe and have a different perspective when it comes to health?
Yeah, that's right. So, growing up, I was always a kind of active kid. At the same time, had a lot of medical complications growing up. Started my young career, and then at the age of 24, diagnosed with a super rare but malignant brain cancer that I had to go and seek treatment for in the US.
And I know seeing people, especially even older people, who have to battle and kind of move through any sort of diagnosis that's chronic or cancer related, it almost hits you that you need to figure out how to live life the best way so you can optimize. What were some of the feelings you had when they told you that was happening at such a young age, and how did that map out how you then moved forward?
I kind of took the information on as a challenge, in the sense that I've always kind of prided myself on being really good at collecting information and collating it and making sense of it. And at the same time, I was a kind of hypochondriac growing up, so I was always scared of cancer and germs and things like that. And then obviously to get a brain cancer, where if you know anything about cancers, the average lifespan of someone with cancer is 10% of people live beyond 5 years.
Yeah.
So I kind of took the challenge as, what can I do to manage everything that I can? So control the variables that I could, and then leave everything else up to fate, right? So one of the kind of key things that I didn't do was that I didn't research what I was diagnosed with. Thankfully, like literally still to this date, I've never ever researched malignant pineal cytoma, because I didn't want to see the results of anyone else's story, right? So I wanted to say, it's my cancer, it's my problem, it's my body. How do I deal with this? And what do I take on? And how do I make sure that I give myself the best chance of dealing with it? So in terms of a controlled environment, I was like, look, everyone else obviously has their story, but from my perspective, I'm controlling what I can, and I'll give it my best shot. I went on an alkaline diet. I changed my way of exercising, and at the same time, I also really kind of started focusing on mental health and all of the aspects of mental health before it kind of became a mainstream thing, right? Like, I had 4 brain surgeries. The one was a 14-hour surgery where they removed 70% of the tumor. They kind of gave me the odds of waking up before surgery as like 30%, that I would come out of surgery alive and survive treatment. And then obviously you're faced with all of these really kind of formidable odds. And yeah, I have had my bouts of anxiety. Generalized health anxiety obviously is coming from it. I've had depression, obviously, having gone through such a life-changing situation where at 24 you're answering very real questions. And then I think something that I still deal with today is PTSD, right? You have to lie on a surgery table, you have to say goodbye to your friends and your family, and you have to acknowledge that there is a very high likelihood that you might not wake up. So, and then to go through that 4 times. And now even today when I walk into a hospital, I get something called like white coat syndrome, where my blood pressure skyrockets, and I start getting anxious and everything like that. So for me, it was just internalizing it, not kind of researching it, and at the same time just getting a tight-knit group of people together that knew what our plan was.
That's such an interesting way of approaching it, because it almost makes me think of when people talk about, like, say, a skier. You don't tell them, don't kind of miss the trees, or you don't focus on the trees. You tell them, go on the path, stay on the snow. You didn't research all of the things that happen to other people and all of the side effects perhaps of the medication and everything else. You looked at it as, this is me, this is my battle that I'm going to have, and I'm going to try optimize. Where do you think that mindset came from?
I think it was probably to do with having grown up and faced so many different challenges that were health related, right? Mm-hmm. And also at the same time, I knew that if I looked at the data, it wouldn't be good. Mm-hmm. So I needed a different true north. And I was like, what do I do to avoid looking at it? And at the same time, what is my objective out of all of this? Like my dad said to me when we took off and we flew over to the States, he said, Brady, I'll bring you home. And for me, that was like, okay, that's what I need to do to get it done. And everything that was geared towards that is what made me so much stronger. I kind of looked at it as armor, right? You like make sure that you have a strong support base of doctors, that you have the information coming from your doctors, that you have your friends that you can speak with. And then at the same time, making sure that everyone buys into that story. And I think also having been competitive and being a very competitive person, I didn't want to look at anyone else's story. I wanted it to be my challenge and something that I would be able to deal with.
I love that. And you said control the things you can control. What were those things and how did you control them?
So I broke it down into 4 different things, right? So I broke it down into wellness, exercise, lifestyle, and diet. Mm-hmm. And obviously diet is, they say it's like 80% of the effort, right? Is that you need to make sure that you're putting things into your body that aren't causing free radicals, that obviously aren't high in sugar, because then it increases your acid load on your body. Mm-hmm. So I made sure that I went onto an alkaline diet. I became very kind of disciplined in what I ate. Obviously brain cancer isn't related to it, but I was trying to make sure that I wasn't encouraging secondaries with obviously it being a malignant cancer. And then I was always an active person growing up, but I guess that was from an aesthetic, make sure I look okay on the beach kind of thing. But then you realize that your body and movement has a really big knock-on effect to your mental health. Mm-hmm. And obviously at the time I was going through so many challenges mentally, and the only thing that really kind of broke me away from everything was exercise, was that release of endorphins and chemicals that only kind of exercise can give you. And then obviously at the same time, like a huge lifestyle change. I used to be quite a big partier, quite a big drinker. And then that was actually what made me first pick up that something was wrong, or actually not pick up that something was wrong. So basically for 9 months, I'd been vomiting in the shower every single morning. Oh, wow. But I was also working a really high pressure job that was work hard, play hard. Okay. So I just associated me vomiting every morning with potential hangover. And then eventually one morning, I was talking to my PA, and I went completely deaf, and I lost all movement in my arms. And then I realized something was wrong. So that then made me go to the ENT, because I still actually didn't think it was brain cancer. Of course. So yeah, just that was a bit of a segue into the lifestyle side of it, was making sure that I encourage myself to be positive and go out and do things. And again, when the likelihood of you making it past 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years is put in front of you, you start to realize that you actually want to do things that create memories, right? Rather than are just some sort of material thing. So I really kind of changed tact on the lifestyle approach. And then like I said earlier, wellness for me was a really big thing. I guess yoga, Pilates, I started writing like a blog when I went through it all. I had a following of like 27,000 people. That it was literally just me doing brain dumps every day of where I was mentally, what I was going through. And it was it was a bit cathartic, right? Because I was able to rationalize everything through writing and then deal with it. And it all kind of worked together in a way that, for better or for worse, kind of worked for me. And I'm still here 12 years later from my last of 4 operations, and I still practice those things today.
If I had to ask you, Brad, I mean, at such a young age to be told these things and then have to shift, almost like I was saying, you needed to shift, you needed to get things in order. What would be the advice or the things you tell the younger version of yourself so that you are more streamlined to get to the point where you are today? Because it feels like you've been able to find the things that work for you. Or do you think that you have to go through that journey to really figure out those things that are important and work when it comes to the things that anchor?
I tell this to a lot of people, and it's a bit of a sensitive thing, right? Because everyone has different stories around cancer. But for what I went through and for what I learned, I tell people it was a good thing that I had cancer and that I went through it. But at the same time, I wouldn't wish cancer on my worst enemy, right? But through all of it, you see the world in a completely different way. Like, I've literally been taken to the brink. I've had to sign 4 different sets of wills and indemnity papers, and I've had to say goodbye to my family 4 times. So you very quickly are able to decipher whether something is actually going to have a lasting impact on you or not. If I'm having an argument with my wife, or if something at work is upsetting me, I very quickly am able to determine, is this actually something that is worth being upset over? Is it actually something that in a day's time, in a week's time, in a month's time, that I'll look back on and say, yeah, that was actually worth it, and it was justifiable. And the advice that I have to take is firstly, create memories and don't collect things in exchange of memories, right? For me, it's always about memories over things, and trying to create as many memories that are good and that help you become a better person as possible. Because when you're lying on those tables, any material thing does not go through your mind.
True. Very true. Wow. It's a strange thing, right? That you now have this clarity, but this clarity is born of you now having to make sure that you battle what was happening. And it's so unique, because at a time where I was in a medical oncology ward and I'd speak to people and they'd tell me very similar things. They'd be like, the noise, you eventually realize what actually is something you should listen to and what it is you shouldn't. And not every single one of those people did make it, but the ones that do go, well, at least I have that strong sense of clarity, and that's what I move forward with. But in your case, you've also then been able to manifest these principles that you can then pass down to people who can then optimize their lives through kind of that wellness, the exercise, the diet, and everything else.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a beautiful thing.
Cool, thank you. And I think for me, the point where I realized that it was all worth it was after I'd survived everything. Other people started coming to me for information. They said, like, what did you do? How did you exercise? How did you eat? How did you deal with that amount of information being thrown at you that literally your whole world gets turned upside down? And I worked with over 40 different people that had glioblastomas to chondrosarcomas to testicular cancer to liver and pancreatic cancer. And I imparted knowledge on them. And I guess the hardest thing is that a lot of those people, well, not a lot, but a portion of those people didn't make it, right? And it's a reminder every time that happens that my story could have been completely different. And it just reminds the mindset is, don't take these things for advantage, because things change quickly. I literally went to the doctor for what I thought was a ENT sinus problem and diagnosed with a malignant brain cancer.
There you have it. I think it's also important to take and extract that concept with everything that you do, just because you might be battling something and you've heard about concepts around if it's an illness or a condition, doesn't mean you're going to go down that path. It's your life. It's how you decide to live it, and trying to optimize as best as you can is probably the best advice you can give for everything that you confront in life. Bradley, thank you for sitting down with me. It's been awesome.
Cool.
A wealth
Thanks,
of
Fez.
knowledge. And that is another Medshield Movement Connect show, connecting the dots and hopefully letting you live a better life and optimizing your lifestyle.